Along with immigration, we have housing. That's the biggest issue in the country, and then not to mention the cost of living. We'll get to the cost of living another day. But I think everybody can agree to have a good life and to have a good function in life. The main thing you need is a roof over your head. And that's the most important thing. As long as you have a roof over your head, somewhere out of the cold, out of the weather, that's the most important thing. And looking at the Finnish model, because I've just been recently in Finland, the way they do it. Take for example on homelessness, they don't try and get people off drugs and alcohol first. They try and get them into a proper stable home where they have a roof over their head, they have some kind of stability, and that's the word we need: stability. When you have a home, you have stability, and you're not a threat of being affected. Take for example social housing, etc., etc., and that's what people need: stability, and then you can work on the other problems. And that's what you need. You need the foundations. You need the work of the foundations to build a house. You can't just plonk a house down without a foundations. It's going to collapse. And unfortunately, that's what we're seeing in this country now. Take for example homelessness, which adds into the housing crisis too, because it's one and the same. If there's no houses, people are going to be homeless. And without the good foundations, again, the whole thing comes crashing down. As we've seen, it's just the exact same thing. But unfortunately, the main thing about housing and stuff like that in this state, and it has to be said, is greed. Landlords and developers, big developer venture funds, they're too greedy. They care about money. They don't care about people. They just want money. They're so obsessed with money. As money is the corruption of all evil, and that's what it is. It's all about greed, and that's what the house market is. You see these big apartments being built in Dublin. All these big venture funds, big corporations are coming and buying them all up. And if you get a house, God love you, because you'd be paying maybe 4,000 a month for a small apartment. And again, the big companies will care. And there's a lot more I could say. It's a huge big thing. But long story short, the main thing we need to do in terms of housing is to make sure, particularly, that people have some kind of roof over their head. And we've failed as a country, really have, particularly our young generation that wants to move out of their parents' house, who want to try and the prices of houses. It's gone beyond you and me, the only Joe who gets up in the morning to go to work a 9 to 5, a few hours extra maybe. It's beyond their reach, and it's the sad reality. This is beyond their reach. Hundreds of thousands of euro. It's insane. In Cavan alone, in a rural county, I know it's a commuter county now, we would call it, but in County Cavan alone, they're looking for nearly 300,000 euro. And just to put in perspective, an ordinary Joe owning, say, 30,000 a year, 40,000 at most, paying tax and all that, and then paying for a car, or paying tax, you're paying for electricity bills. It's on you literally probably be nearly 90 by the time you nearly pay it off at this stage, because the way the country's going is just take it, they give with one hand and take with the other hand, and especially young people, they're being fucked over every way possible, and it's so upsetting to see, because they've basically been our generation's basically been locked out of houses. And the one way we have to fix it, and this is the thing, there's so many houses. Take for example in Cavan, there's 2,000 houses that are lying abandoned that could be done up. I know it takes time. You can't just pluck a house down and stuff like that. You can't just build. It takes time. Everybody understands that. But it's the fact of the matter that there's not really any big move to get things done, take for example. And not even that, there's so many builders, contractors, people, construction workers that are leaving this country to go to Australia because they get better conditions, better pay. The government fucks them over less. Over here, the government fucks you over in every conceivable way in terms of taxing people. Take for example, painters, construction workers, bricklayers. They're going off, why should they stay here and get paid little to nothing and pay a huge amount and try and buy a house themselves? They could never do it. So you wouldn't blame them going off, and that's a big issue too. We don't have the manpower to build the houses, and what we need to, and I'm kind of taking a bit of the Labour Party, what the Labour Party said here, because I do agree. Years ago, the council used to have for social housing tables. I know I'm all over the place here, but there's a lot to cover in this, so just bear with me. And the local authorities, Cavan County Council, take for example, Monaghan County Council, used to have people themselves, bricklayers, painters, etc., employed by the local authority to build social houses in the 80s and the 70s. And that was all by the local authorities during in construction of council houses, take for example. Nowadays, we have to get contractors out, and it's huge investment that has been put in, because obviously contractors go at their own speed, etc., with the state. It's the same with the National Children's Hospital. If the state was building it themselves, it probably would be done by now. Near enough. Obviously, it's a big project, etc., But, compared to giving it the private company, it should be the state that's doing it, basically. And it would be a bit cheaper in a way, but you have to pay, obviously, people to do it. That's what the state doesn't want to do. But that's what we should do. And I do agree with the Labour Party, and I agree with them that we should have, instead of private contracts, it should be the state that's building it. And so it should be. But see, the government are hand in hand. The TDs are all landlords in the door. and they're all getting their kickbacks. They're all getting a few brown envelopes under the table from these big developers. Because again, they're allowed to run rampant around this country for vulture funds. They're allowed to do whatever they want, as long as the TDs get their brown envelopes, and there's exceptions made. You name it, it's made. But the saddest possible thing is that there's so many. You take, for example, the homeless figures, because again, it's one and the same. The housing and the homeless, because if there's no housing, people have to sleep in the streets. And it's so sad to see how many young children are sleeping in hotel rooms. That's their home, a hotel room, on the floor, doing their homework on a hotel floor. And even the worstest thing about it all is some people don't have anywhere to go at all. They're out in the street. Some maybe have a tent, maybe a blanket, and that's it. And this is Ireland. This is Ireland. This is the saddest possible thing. The next thing I'm going to say, that less than over 100 years ago, people went into the GPO in 1916 hoping that their grandchildren, their children would have a better tomorrow. And we have failed. And this is the simple fact of the matter. We have failed as a country. We have failed our own people. And not the Irish people themselves, but the people at the top, the government, NGOs, etc., etc., they failed the state. They have literally failed the future generation, the next generation, our generation. They have failed the future generation. They failed to live up to the ideas of the people that went out and fought for this country to be a sovereign, independent state. We have thrown that down the drain, unfortunately. We have thrown it down the drain, and all because of greed. And that's where the odd is. What it boils down to is the government and big corporations and stuff are hand in hand, basically. We see it with Apple, etc., etc. It's all about the money. They don't pay any corporation tax here. There's big handouts given out to them, and the government TDs and stuff are getting big handouts and all that. And that's all it's all about. It's all about greed. It's all about greed and corruption. And it is the devil that's in the detail, to be totally honest with you. But we have to try and get a handle of this, because nobody's going to have a family. I can tell you, I heard many stories of young people who want to have a child, and stuff like that, and they can't afford it, because you can't have a child when you're in a small, rented apartment, take for example. You need space for a child. Everybody agrees with that. You need space. You can't just have a 2-bedroom house and try and have a baby, etc., etc. You need space. You need space. You can't have the child. And that's why the birth rates are so low too, and everything kind of goes hand in hand with houses. As I said in the beginning, it's stability. That's what we need. We need to give young people stability. And we do need rapid growth. And to be totally honest, I nearly go as far as saying we do have that big of an army, but I do think we should nearly mobilise the army to build some kind of social housing and stuff like that, because we need numbers. We need manpower to build houses. And to be totally honest, it's a national emergency, to be totally honest. And it justifies, in my opinion, mobilising the army to try and build houses. Even modular homes, take for example. I know I'm going all over the place here, but even modular homes, even as a short-term solution, to get a few people out of emergency accommodation to modular homes. Even people that's on the housing waiting list, take for example people in Cavan that are waiting nearly 15 years on the housing waiting list with children in damp, mouldy conditions. I could nearly stay 6 or 7 hours talking about everything to do with the housing crisis, but everybody knows that it's the biggest issue of our young people's generation, because if we don't fix it, the next generation will suffer more. And this generation is suffering at the moment, but the next generation is what we should be more fearful for, because we're not building enough. We have to, do up houses that are abandoned, etc. So we need to do it, and we need to start doing it. And as I say, we need manpower, and the only way to do it too is to keep people here that are builders, contractors, take for example, and people that build houses, bricklayers, etc., etc., painters. There's a lack of them, lack of tradesmen around the country. If we lower the taxes for them to run a business, to be able to get a good wage and stuff like that, they will stay. It's the fact of the matter, that's the problem. There's loads of people leaving. I know 2 or 3 people that are tradesmen that could do anything, good with their hands, basically. And they're gone. They're gone, never to return. They're gone off to Australia, big construction sites in Sydney, huge amount of money, more money than you can ever imagine here, to be able to afford a house in less than a few years. Over here, if they stayed here, they'd be fucked over by the government in every conceivable way. It'd take 900 years for them to own their own house. And what, you wouldn't blame them, and this is the thing, we wouldn't blame the young people for doing it, because why would you wait until you're nearly 90 before you can actually say you own your own house? Because this is the sad reality, and this is the main thing too. Life is too short. Life is too short. We don't know what tomorrow will bring. It's simple, and that's the sad reality of it. We don't know what tomorrow will bring. And the way we do it, and the same with house and the same with everything, we should meet people, particularly young people starting out in life. We have to meet them halfway. And that's the thing, we have to meet people halfway and be reasonable with them. I think that's the main thing in life, try and be reasonable with people, try and meet people halfway, to give them a bit of a boost in life, give them a bit of a leg up. And at the moment, we're just kind of saying to our young people, you're basically on your own, you know. Because unfortunately, things are more complicated nowadays than they were years ago. Things were simpler back years ago. Things were more even. Things were more fair, I nearly would say. Things were hard years ago, of course. But things were more fair in terms of house and stuff. People could actually buy a house. Like our grandparents, our parents could actually buy a house. You know, imagine that. Nowadays, it's impossible for a young person to buy a house. So that generation's long gone. That society's long gone. But it is the second biggest issue, in my opinion, in the country. We do need to get a grip on it. And as I say, the main thing is about stability. People's lives. People need stability. Because I can't tell you the amount of people I've heard. Because landlords, again, if you live in the private rented apartment, take for example a house, the landlord tomorrow morning could be like, I want to sell the property, I'm kicking you out. Simple as that. Even though you've done nothing wrong yourself, if you say you didn't pay the rent for 6 years or something like that, you know, you would understandably be kicked out. But say for example, you were paying the rent, you're doing your best, you're even cleaning up the apartment and stuff, even though it's not your place, you know, and the landlord can come along and kick you out at the moment's notice without any reason because he's selling the property. And that fear is upsetting people, obviously, too. And again, it's about stability. And obviously, social housing and affordable housing is the way to go under the local authority. And again, I would say the local authority should be building, not so much private contractors. But I do think private contractors have some role to play. But I do think the state is the people should have the main role to play in this. And as I say, it nearly justifies mobilising the army, whatever left of the army, to help kind of build houses. Even modular homes, take for example, for at least to get people off the streets, you know, young families, young Irish families off the streets. And I think that's the main thing, just to get them off the streets so they won't be sleeping on the streets. Because we all admit it, we are in the 24th century. Back in the 60s, imagine even in the 60s less homeless people in this country. 14,000 people homeless. Imagine that back in the 60s was less people homeless when Ireland was dirt poor and one of the richest countries in the world we are today. It just doesn't make any sense. But it all goes down to one thing, and I kept saying it and saying it all over again. It's down to greed. It's down to greed. It's down to corruption. It's down to handouts under the table. That's what it is. And that's the basic function. Until we solve that, until we get people who care, because again, these people don't care. They don't have a soul. The only soul they have is money. The majority of these people. Until we get people that have a soul, have a heart, you know, who care. You know, nothing's ever really going to be sorted. And again, as I say, if there was no private contract, there was a government-run services, take for example, state construction firm, there'd be no handouts, there'd be no brown envelopes, because we wouldn't be relying on private companies to do it. But again, the only thing about that, and all the TDs would say the same probably, is that you have to pay people money to build houses, and the councils don't want to pay anybody nowadays to do work. They want people based to work for nothing. But yeah, let me know what you think. I know there's hundreds more things I could say, but there's definitely something we need to fix. If we're going to fix, we have to fix it in the next 5 years. Or unfortunately, the next generation is gone too. The same as myself, my generation, we will never be able to own a home. You know, we owe it to the next generation, we owe it to the generations after us. When I'm dead and gone, we owe it to them that they can actually say they own a house. We owe it to them, and we have to make sure that we make a huge change in society. And the change has to start now, really. And this election is a choice between change or keeping the status quo. Thank you.